Just want to move on and cover this quick story before we get to the newspaper, because it seems like the IRFU's anti-doping policy is a bit of a mess at the moment. So this is from their official document, 2016-2017 anti-doping policy. This is Philip Brown's introduction, the first 3 lines. The IRFU continues to invest in education and awareness campaigns around the dangers of doping in sport. We operate a zero-tolerance policy to cheating within rugby. Okay, so that's what they say. And here's a clip of Philip Brown talking about that zero tolerance in the aftermath of Munster signing Gerbrand-Grobler. Munster and the IRFU effectively signing Gerbrand-Grobler, because the IRFU have to sign off on a foreign player arriving into Ireland. And so somebody at the IRFU had to rubber stamp that and go, yeah, this is our guy. We want him to play for us and we want him to represent Munster and to be a part of our rugby culture. So we interviewed Philip Brown around that time. Have a look.
But why are you poisoning the Munster brand by bringing in a drug sheet? I don't understand that.
Let me just continue. I think the emphasis that we put on anti-doping in this country is significant. We have 4 people working in, 1 person in each province working in terms of our Spirit programme on anti-doping. But listen, if you'd like me to explain, I'll explain. But
why do you risk all that?
And just continue. Let me explain. The bottom line is that we have a medical system. We have an anti-doping system, we have an educational system, all of which is geared to ensure that we have a clean environment and a safe environment for players to play in. Now, in relation to
and then you bring a cheat in, though.
In relation to the Grobler situation, I think the answer, I think, really is well, firstly, there was no specific policy at that particular time to deal with that particular set of circumstances.
Did you talk about it? Did you say this guy has tested positive for anabolic steroids? Let's have a chat about it.
I certainly didn't talk about it because that doesn't come to me. But at the end of the day, I'm not ducking the issue. The issue here is that something that we should or should not do? And I think that's a valid question, and it's a question that we have to take on board, and I think it's something we have to consider.
Should he play over the course of the rest of the season?
At the end of the day, the man is under a contract. He's a 20-year-old. He's not 20 years old now.
But you could pay that contract up and make sure that he doesn't play.
At this stage, the bottom line is he's on the roster in Munster. He's playing with Munster. I think the man should be given a chance to do what he is paid to do and to do what he is entitled to do in terms of his chosen path and his chosen career.
Even though it damages the Munster brand.
Okay, we're going to wrap this up now.
Well, I think at the end of the day, I think what we'll do is we'll obviously take on board the views that have been expressed both publicly and privately, and we'll obviously have to consider, do we need a policy, and how should we consider dealing with that set of circumstances in the future.
Okay, so that's Philip Brown maintaining that they do have a zero tolerance policy towards doping in Irish rugby. But David Nucifoa, who is the high performance director of rugby in Ireland, and obviously we're achieving great things with our senior international team. In the second part of the interview that he gave to the daily newspapers who are out in Australia, has said this: we don't have a zero tolerance policy to rugby at all. Now that's a paraphrase, but we would look at it and we'd look at the individual case of what's happened. I think it wouldn't be smart to put a stamp and say anyone who has had a doping conviction cannot play rugby here. That wouldn't make any sense whatsoever. So I think moving forward, you continue to look at it on a case-by-case basis. You continue to look at it on a case-by-case basis is not a zero tolerance policy. That's fairly obvious. It's rudimentary use of language. In your anti-doping policy, in the documents that you publish, you say, we have a zero tolerance policy. But when the guy who's hiring people says, well, actually, we're going to look on it on a case-by-case basis, then somebody somewhere hasn't read the memo. There was another interesting part in the interview that we did with Philip Brown where we were talking about, you have to bear responsibility for this. And he was kind of making the point, well, actually, it wasn't on my desk. I wasn't the one who ultimately made the decision. So clearly Nucifoa is coming out and defending his decision to hire Gerbrand-Grobler and say that actually, in that case, it was grand because there were extenuating circumstances, which means you don't have a zero tolerance policy, which means the IRFU have either not been telling us the truth about what their policy is, or there's been a breakdown in communication between the high performance director and the chief executive of the IRFU. So you pay your money and you make your choice about which of these parties you're going to believe, but certainly there is something not working and not functioning in the IRFU's doping policy at the moment, and I don't know what the truth is. Are you happy if we sign dopers into the future? Is that what we're going to do? It's like, come on down and you can say, you did your 2 years, you've made a mistake as a young man. It's like, well, I don't know. I mean, the point about taking drugs is that like it's not like a heat of the moment, a headbutt or a gouge or something which is grim, but part of the game that we kind of see. Okay, we can punish you for that. Ordering drugs, taking drugs, buying drugs, finding out which drugs to take, that's premeditated. That's like, it's the same thing as like bringing a blood bag and trying to cheat the way Harlequins cheated. It's like that level of tampering with the game and with the fabric of the game. So the IRFU have decided that they don't have a zero tolerance policy, or certainly the guy who's in charge of signing players has said he doesn't have a zero tolerance policy. And we're going to have to wait and see what that means. The one case where I would actually take a doper is if they've played a role in educating people and said, I got this drug, I paid this much money for it, I took it for these reasons, it gave me these benefits. You can see the transformation in my body here, here, and here, and I will help to snitch on other people who are infesting our sport with it. In that instance, I'm like, yeah, let's get those people in, and they can come to the system and they can help train the people who are coming up about what the issues are, and they can help train the people who are trying to catch the cheats as well and say, you could check these people out because their pattern of behaviour is the same as mine was when I was doping. I would definitely be interested in having some of those people in the system. But otherwise, come on, you're poisoning the well.
A case-by-case basis is an interesting one. It wouldn't make any sense either, is kind of a line there that sticks out to me. What exactly does that mean? It wouldn't make any sense for us to not hire dopers whenever it suits us, as in the point of being high performance director means that high performance comes at any sort of cost, that no matter what is involved, no matter what is in your system, no matter what your history entails, as long as we're getting high performance out of you, it doesn't matter what your history is, it doesn't matter how badly you're poisoning our well. It's just...
So long as we're winning.
Yeah, exactly. It's very...
It's an excellent point.
It's a very strange comment that this whole thing... It's almost as if this is the real reaction. It's almost as if Nucifoa hasn't had time to think about what he's going to say and is almost speaking from the heart here on this issue. Whereas with Philip Brown, there was time there. That was like, just to remind people of the context of that, that was a huge media operation that day in the Aviva Stadium. You obviously had John Delaney speaking about Martin O'Neill on the very same setting.
They were announcing the fact that Aviva was re-upping for another 5 years. And the biggest sponsorship deal in Irish society, not just Irish sport. It's like the biggest deal in sponsorship in Ireland, and that was a big day for them. And
so they could control the message.
But it got completely overshadowed, obviously, by the Grobler story.
Yeah, exactly. But like, there was thought put into that, whereas I think sometimes you get to see the real attitudes towards this a few months down the line, when suddenly it's like, what about this? What about this thing? What are your actual thoughts on this, rather than the pre-prepared...
The moment,
yeah,
media trained stuff, which makes that a little bit more concerning, right? It's like, well, if it's going to help us win and we need to sign this player and he's got drugs in his past, so long as he spins us a yarn that we can go, yeah, that's fine, yeah, sure. Case by case. We're off the hook. We don't have to have a zero tolerance policy. So I don't know, if that's what everybody wants for Irish Rugby, that's what you've got at the moment. That is the situation where the IRFU's printed documentation about this conflicts with what their high performance director is saying. That's a big conflict, and somebody somewhere has to clear that up. Otherwise, who knows what's coming down the tracks in the future? Because if you don't have a zero tolerance policy, you end up with sports like cycling, or who knows, maybe football.